folks, welcome to Board Game Corner. I'm Mark.
And I'm Randy.
This week we're taking a look at Kingsport Festival, the card game. We are the bad guys this time.
Kingsport Festival, the card game, is brought to you by Passport Game Studios, Sir Chester Cobblepot, and Gyochi Uniti. The game supports 3 to 5 players, ages 13 and up, and each game takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play.
Great. Well, let's go invoke those elder gods. In the unimaginable darkness of Kingsport, silent wanderers are called to profane celebration. Their goal, to invoke the unthinkable horrors, a dread terror that is not of this world or any other, but rather from the spaces between the stars, demands your submission. Meanwhile, unwary investigators vainly attempt to halt this appalling chapter in the dark history of Arkham. As the high priest of one of these shadowy cults in Kingsport's festival, the card game, you must dominate the city. You will invoke cosmic creatures and unholy gods to receive their gifts. But you must take care to preserve your sanity and thwart the investigators who seek to stop you. This time, you are the bad guys. Okay, so to start the game, each cultist receives one pink counter which represents their sanity. The counter starts at 10. You will arrange the elder gods on the table as so. Each card shows what player count is represented. 3, 4, and 5 player games. So, depending on the number of players, it will then dictate the number of elder gods in play. Next, shuffle the 14 investigator cards and deal 1. The investigator will affect aspects of the gameplay for the entire game. Investigators have varying abilities that can affect each player on their turn or may just have an in-game effect. However, the investigators do perform raids throughout the game, which we will take a closer look at in a bit. A game is composed of 9 rounds with 4 phases. Before play can begin, the round tracker is set to the timepiece. Then it is passed to the player on the left, indicating the first round. The player who passes the round tracker gains 1 sanity for doing so, while the recipient sets the counter to the next or starting round. Okay, like I said, there are 4 phases on your turn: expansion, invocation, raid, and the end of your turn. Expansion, the player or cultist will receive 1 gray Dominion die. They must roll this dice. Then they play any number of cards from their hand to the table, which in turn may gain them more Dominion dice or affect the results. As the game progresses, you will have more and more elder gods available to you to bring to the world to its knees. Each with amazing and sinister abilities, these cards can chain or feed into one another as you play them. The domain dice are your currency, and what you use to invoke more elder gods in the invocation phase. The domain dice have 3 possible results: evil, death, and the highly sought after destruction. Next up is the invocation phase. In this phase, you will spend the domain resources you gained in the expansion phase. Depending on your results, you may have 1 to many options for bringing new elder gods into your hand. But you can only invoke a single elder god on your turn, so spend your domain dice wisely. Okay, so next is the raid. When indicated on the investigator card, a raid begins. This only affects 3 rounds throughout a game. So, for example, Henry here would activate his raid on rounds 3, 5, and 9, with varying amounts of damage. So the gun icon determines how much damage the investigator can do to a cultist's sanity points. Each cultist will have to defend in turn by playing cards from their hand that also have the gun icon in the bottom right corner. But if you played all your cards in the expansion phase, then you would take the full damage. However, if you still have cards in your hand and you successfully defend, then you would either receive no damage or potentially you could gain sanity points by playing extra defense. It's wise to hold back some defense cards in rounds when you know a raid will take place. Then finally you end your turn by returning all the cards you played back into your hand. Then play passes to the cultist on your left. Here's a closer look at the icons: evil, death, and destruction. However, some elder gods require a choice of domains, a wild you might even say, with a couple variances. 2 icons of this type that overlap require 2 or more of the same domain. However, 2 icons that are separated require the use of different domains. It is very important to keep an eye on your sanity points. If your sanity is depleted, then you must pay the sanity costs you incur by using your cult points. These points are located at the bottom left of each card. The cult points are also used as victory points at the end of the game. So, the game ends when the 9th round has reached, unless Azathoth is invoked, which would end the game early. The cultist with the most cult points is declared the winner. Ties are given to the player with the most sanity points, and if there's still a tie, the player with the most elder gods wins. All right, what do we think of this game? Well, you know, I wanted to really like this game. I don't dislike it. There was just some stumbling blocks at the beginning, right? The rule book was a little rough to get through. Some of the stuff wasn't super clear, but the nice thing is that once you play, things start to click. You're like, oh, that makes sense. Yep. And I think 2 of my favorite things about this game is just I really do like the artwork. I think it sets the mood really well.
The artwork is good. It's leveraged from Kingsport Festival, the board game.
Yep.
And it's very good artwork. It does tend to be a little bit dark, and some have claimed it's a little bit muddy. I actually feel that way too.
There is some of that for sure.
But it's excellent artwork. It
really is. So I really like that. And then after the game is progressing, there really starts to be some interesting choices that you have to make.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I really like that about it. Now, some of the stumbling blocks kind of slowed down how much I really liked it out of the gate, right? I think by the 4th and 5th play, we started to really enjoy it more.
Yeah.
So you really need to get a couple plays under your belt. And I know that's not the best of things to say. If you can just get through that first hour, you'll really like it. No, it's not like that. The game plays pretty quick.
The game does play very quickly, and if you have somebody else teaching it to you, I think you'll get over a lot of those hurdles more quickly. A lot of the issues that we encountered were based on the rule book. There are various things like the way it explains the rounds and the turns are a little bit confusing. The way it explains it sounds like what you do in a round. Everybody does a phase before you move to the next phase, and really it's not across the round. It's within a turn. You do all 4 phases, and then you move the next person, do all 4 phases. And that wasn't clear in the rule book. And the thing that you noticed was that somebody is running amok with the fonts.
Oh my gosh.
And
they were so hard to read.
Yeah, and it's not the whole rule book, but there were certain passages where they give examples.
The examples, and that's what you really wanted to read.
Exactly.
And it's just really, and they're trying to do it very theme-based.
Thematically, yeah.
Right, but I just wanted to read it.
So I think those things could make the game more easily accessible for people if they don't have somebody to teach it to them. But if you have somebody teaching to you, you can skip over all that.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so the stuff I really like, though, right, like I said, the decision making, which is pretty neat. And after you get those cards, after you get several cards in your hand, then you can really start to see how things chain and work together to change dice. So you're not always stuck on what you roll, because there are cards that allow you to manipulate the dice.
Right.
So that helps mitigate some of that. So you just have to hope, there is some hope of rolling the dice to get things right away. But I think that it gives you some opportunity to make some interesting choices.
It is, and I love the mechanics of this game.
Yeah.
Now there are various things I think could have been tweaked and improved. And in fact, I'm going to give you an example right now. Okay, Randy, do you have some thematic visual aids? Yes, thematic visual aids to show you some things that could be better about this game. And here we go, little tiny Cthulhu.
Mr. Cthulhu.
So these are the 3 colors of the resources that you generate.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think could be better is both on the dice and the cards. Dice, there's a lot of problems distinguishing the very, very, very dark purple from the black, especially if you're looking at someone across the table. And I think that's something that could have been improved. But not only on the dice, I would have loved to see it on the cards themselves. So if you have a card that generates 2 dice of this color, of the destruction god, it would be nice to see that sort of color down here in the text, maybe around the destruction symbol. Same thing for death and evil. You want that sort of ability to look at a card and say, without picking it up and reviewing it, then accidentally putting it in your hand, it's like, oh yeah, I haven't bought that yet. It goes over here.
Right.
You want the ability to scan the table and see which cards you want. And unfortunately, they didn't do that. So there's that usability aspect, I think, is an issue. But that said, I love the mechanics because now Mark doesn't like Splendor.
Not a big fan.
And Splendor, for those of you who don't know, is a game where you're investing in elements that generate resources, so you can get better elements that generate better resources, and you have this ladder effect.
Poker chips do not make a good game.
No, well, it's nice tactily, though. This is a game that has some similarities, but it adds not only dice, but it adds the sanity element, where you can be spending sanity to make some changes in the resources you're generating. And so that's a great thing.
It really is. Yeah.
And so even if you don't like Splendor, he didn't like Splendor, but he likes the mechanics of this game. I do. So it's not just for Splendor folks.
And then the neat thing too with the investigators, there's only one per game, but each investigator can radically change how you play.
Yeah,
which is pretty neat.
It's very neat. It adds a lot of replayability to the game, because the thing that you were doing last game and really focusing on this or avoiding something like that, everything changes in the next game. Now, the investigator is both a plus, but it's also a minus in the sense of thematically, because the game, for those of you who are concerned about, the death, the evil, and the destruction, that's not anything I want my kids really focusing on. You don't feel like you're a cultist.
No, you don't.
Or anything like that. And that's good.
The theme is very on the surface.
It's basically shellacked on.
Yeah.
The artwork does add a little bit to it. It does set the mood, absolutely. But some of the things that I said the investigator is kind of a minus. The fact that the guns actually damage your sanity rather than your health, is a little
goofy.
Yeah, it's a little bit goofy. And the fact of not all... A plus to them, because in the hierarchy here that they've laid out, it really is the lesser gods to the greater gods. Yeah, and you've got Azathoth up here at the top. So they've done a good job reflecting the gods, but the gods themselves don't necessarily have anything to do with their costs or the effects they have. At least,
and it's just a victory point salad.
It really is. And so you're just trying to collect these cards to get victory points or to defend against the investigator.
Now, I don't really like to draw big comparisons against games like this where it has a Big Brother board game, right? So I feel like this game should stand on its own. It shouldn't rely on the board game to be a good game, right? So all I'm going to say about that comparison is that it has a similar feel, okay? So if you like the board game, you should probably give this a try. But it's in that same, it definitely has that same feel and the same... it puts you in the same kind of mood. Right?
Yeah, it does. It's not, they're not the same mechanics.
Right.
And I think that this is, I think, a quicker game. And
much quicker.
Yeah, and you don't have to know anything about the board game.
Right.
And in fact, you might be asking, hey, do we have to know anything about the Cthulhu or Lovecraft mythos?
No.
You don't have to know anything about that at all.
And like a lot of games, there's a lot of cards here. And it only takes you a couple, 2-3 games to really kind of learn the cards.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, and some of it's from the hip, right? It's based on, well, I rolled this, so let's see what I can spend it on. It's not like, I can strategically go after that card. You just have to hope that, you can get that card. And again, you can manipulate some of the dice, but you can't manipulate them all.
Right. And if you do, you're just basically there are trade-offs. You're saying, I want to spend more of these cards, but it's going to cost me more sanity to do so.
Right.
So that's a nice balance there.
It is. And I really do like how the sanity mechanism works. And there's even an investigator that allows you to use your sanity at the end of the game as victory points.
Oh, yeah.
It's another varied, different element in the game based on the investigator, which is nice. So I really debated on what to give this game. So the Board Game Corner rating scale is 0 to 4. Okay, so I really hovered between 2.5 and 3, but I think I'm going to go with 2.5 on this one.
Okay, now I did something similar. I hovered in the same spot.
Yeah.
And usually when we're on the cusp, we actually choose one side or the other.
Right.
I actually am rating this 2.75 with an asterisk.
2.75.
Here we go, 2.75. If somebody else teaches this to you, I think you'll find this a 3.0 game. If you're giving it to someone else and saying, hey, sending it as a gift to a friend and they have to read the rule book, I think they'll find it more as a 2.5.
Right.
Now, people who are already fans of games like Splendor, where you're building this ladder, might also be more inclined to to enjoy it. People who are fans of Lovecraft might also be more inclined to enjoy it.
Yep.
But the game itself, it's an interesting game. You can get past those initial hurdles.
And it really, by that third and fourth game, it really has become enjoyable.
It has.
It's definitely something that's going to go in our collection. We're going to keep.
Yeah.
I just wish it had knocked me off my feet. It just didn't do that. But it's still a really enjoyable experience.
And we introduced it to my wife yesterday.
Oh yeah, who have no Lovecraft.
No, doesn't care for Lovecraft,
Right.
even though she gets me all these cool toys. And isn't even a fan of Splendor. And she enjoyed the game. So it was quick to teach her because we'd already played it. And she had a lot of fun.
Yep. So that's our review, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.